CRNA Financial Planning is a sponsor of Beyond the Mask podcast. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Plus, did you know listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits? For details on how to submit, visit the CE credit section at beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to the Beyond the Mask podcast. This is the Anesthesia Alchemy edition. Join hosts Gary Bridges and Lynn Maxey as they deep dive into today's most important clinical conversations.
So, hey there, Gary. We're back at it again tonight on this wonderful evening where it's cold where we are.
Oh, Lord, is it?
Just outside Raleigh. Yeah, it's supposed to get down to 18 degrees, I think.
Oh, wow.
But we are Lynn and Garry Unplugged, and this is Beyond the Mask, Anesthesia Alchemy. And we're welcoming Meri, wonderful Meri.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I understand your daughter is an SRNA up in Chicago way.
No, Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland. I'm so sorry.
Even colder.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I know it's even colder.
Yes.
That's exciting.
So exciting. I can't believe she chose the field that I chose, and she's going to graduate in about a year and a half, and she'll be one of us. Yep.
That is awesome.
That's incredible.
So awesome. Well, you know, Lynn, tonight we kind of went over what are some of the things that we need on the clinical podcast here, and a little bit of a story here. I was at Case Western a week or two ago teaching a class. I have to share the story with the audience. So anyway, this student gets up because I'm having them give their presentations in leadership, and lo and behold, I see a picture and Meri Gilman's name up on the board. And I look up and I said, "What?" And the student says, "That's my mother."
Oh my
I
God.
said, "Oh my God." "Well, tell your mother I said hello.
Oh my God.
It's been a long time." So the anesthesia community is very small. And apart from clinical excellence and now imparting leadership skill sets onto our future CRNAs and the future of the profession, I thought it would be a great opportunity. You know, I shared a lot of stories in the class about preceptors, and this is not just about preceptors. This is the CRNA community inclusive of students, and the topic being civility or lack of civility, if you will, and what two better people to incorporate and talk about civility in healthcare delivery than Meri and Lynn, also known as Jerry, tonight.
No, that's Larry.
Oh, Larry. I'm sorry. Larry, Meri, Garry.
God.
Okay. Sorry, Lynn.
L.
So simple, lady. So simple.
So, Meri, why don't you give us a little bit of your background as far as your career and stuff, and then we'll kind of jump right into sort of maybe the first segment here. We'll talk about recognizing and preventing workplace incivility in the nurse anesthesia community. And it's not just limited to the nurse anesthesia. It's pervasive across healthcare. But anyway, I'm going to turn over to you, Meri, and tell us a little bit, or certainly our audience, a little bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. My name is Meri Gilman-Mays, and I've been a CRNA since 1991. Which makes it, I guess, gazillion years now. Yep. Love the profession, would never change the profession ever, ever, ever. This has been just, the thought of my daughter doing the same thing I'm doing is just overwhelmingly awesome. Started out just in a level 1 trauma center and got all my good trauma experience. And then somehow about 4 or 5 years into my career, I decided that I wanted to be a chief somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you start? Of course, you start at Duke. One of the biggest hospitals. Right.
Oh, that's just easy.
Long story short, you know, what they needed was an outside pair of eyes, a lot of internal applicants that they did not consider. They really didn't do a big background search on me. They were just more interested in the new set of eyes coming in. I paid for that. Mm-hmm. It was a very, very tough road. And it was like leadership 101 from the day I walked in the door. And it was hard. But I did it. And I stayed at Duke for almost 10 years. And then I went on to become the senior director of the CRNAs at the Cleveland Clinic and was there for over 3 years. I got to tell you guys, this is a good topic for me because it was really a rough road.
Yeah.
Today, I am a night CRNA from 7P to 7A at a very small regional hospital, week on, week off, to the point where I cannot deal with any more drama, incivility.
Yeah.
Basically, they stole my soul. It was a rough road. And so I'm really glad I'm here to kind of weigh in on this topic. And that's kind of my story.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this will be a little bit of maybe some therapeutic intervention as we go through this. Yeah. So let's just kind of start out and perhaps let's talk about what is incivility in healthcare delivery and more specifically in the anesthesia community. It's got a lot of sort of broad boundaries, I think. And certainly, I think before we get started, Meri, is to your point, you bring up a really, really important piece here is as nurses, as nurse anesthetists, unless you did formal training as an MBA, a MHA, or a subspecialty in nursing leadership, you don't get that experience. And I try to impart that onto the classes that I teach. And it puts you at a disadvantage, right? Because you don't even know where to start. And to your point, and you're grappling. And there are some programs out there, that's the good news, that offer some very good strategy. You know, in the classes that I teach, I tell them to go to American College of Healthcare Executives. Very, very nice, detailed approach to leadership, if you will, and compartmentalizes things. That being said, that's the benefit, I think, with moving to doctoral education. I know there's a lot of conflict around it, but leadership being one of those mainstays of doctoral preparation. And so let's get into it, Meri, and talk to us a little bit about what is incivility in your eyes and what does that actually look like in the clinical as well as the organizational realm.
You know, Gary, I don't want to start a war.
No.
You know, I don't want this to be a negative Nelly kind of thing. I will say, though, being at very large academic institutions, there really is just this line of incivility between the physicians and the CRNAs.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed. I get it, the threat, because I think we're all feeling it with AAs. It's trickling down now that there's something called an AA out there. Who would have known? Who would have thought that somebody with the title AA with a bachelor in music, God bless them all, is doing my job, So I get it. Since AAs have come out, I've gotten the understanding of how an MDA or an anesthesiologist might feel.
Well, it's a different perspective. It's seeing it a little bit from a different point of view.
It is. I've worked with AAs. I trust AAs. They were great clinicians. It's just, it's different. But I really feel like the civility portion of the workplace starts with the relationship between the docs and the CRNAs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, without question. This sort of undefined pressure and intangible doesn't have to exist. And I get it. There's some days you come into work and, it's not intentional. You maybe dismiss some people or you might not look at them right or maybe something went wrong and you roll your eyes or heaven forbid, snap at someone. We've all done it, right? And the problem is it's okay to have a bad day. The additional problem is it's not okay to have a bad day every day, right? And impart that upon your coworkers because you're now not only putting yourself at a disadvantage, but you're now creating a toxic workplace, and it's just not acceptable. And certainly, this is what I've seen. I'll be honest. I mean, I've done it myself. I mean, you get on a streak where you're under a lot of pressure, time constraints, you're emotionally exhausted. It is very easy, and I'll tell you the time that I used to be bad at things was when I was running the operating room, right? So you got the surgeons that are upset because the case gets in late. You've got interpersonal and inter-professional conflict. You have intra-professional conflict. So you're dealing with these so you're juggling these human resources issues like, I can't work with this CRNA or I can't work with this doc and for a myriad of reasons, right? And you're trying to I'm trying to run an operating room. We got level 1 emergencies coming down and then we're doing all this other juggling. And it's very, very easy to get dismissive under high pressure situations. And certainly, Meri, being in predominantly academic centers, very large, prestigious academic centers, performing can be difficult because of it's not just one, it's numerous
It's coming
people.
at you from all sides.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So it's real. And what does that do? That then turns into a culture, right? That then is really, really difficult to pivot that culture. What do they call that? Now the new terminology is high reliability organizations, and that's a key component, right? I think I need to get that job that somebody every 5 to 7 years redefines the reality check, right?
Yes. It's just so true. And the sad part is, I don't know if it's improving. I don't know what we need to do to get this culture on the right place as long as there is that tension between groups.
Right.
And what's happening, as I know a lot of everybody knows, there's more and more CRNA only run facilities.
Yep.
CRNAs are becoming very independent. And, even if you try, team building and how is this same day surgery center that's run by CRNAs only going to affect you at the hospital where you're working with MDs?
Right.
So it's, it's a tough one.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Lynn? Your experiences?
I've had in anesthesia, I worked at 2 major trauma hospitals, Wake Med Raleigh and then UNC. The culture was very different between the 2 of them. There were some anesthesiologists at Wake who were just nasty to the CRNAs, and they couldn't have cared less what you wanted or what you wanted to talk about. It was just their way. Most of them were very civil. They were very good at teaching and doing all that kind of stuff, but it still made this toxic environment, so much so that somebody took one of the Halloween signs that was the word toxic, and they glued it to the wall above the sign, the clock-in machine. And you just got to the point where nobody was talking to anyone.
Right.
And don't show me the picture of your children. This is not working. You don't get to say and do things behind my back and to my face and then expect us to have this great relationship. So there were times where the only time you would talk to one of the docs is when it was just about the patient, and that was it. There was no, how's your wife? What's going on?
No. So what do I tell my daughter?
Well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get that. There's hope. So by the time we get to the end of this, there's hope. So let me ask you. So let's make this bidirectional, if you will, and it's not just the docs. We have CRNAs that do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
They do.
2 docs
And we have the
2 CRNAs.
surgeons.
Yes, and then trickle in some surgeons.
Absolutely.
So it can be very difficult.
Yep. But this is totally not just a lateral one-way ticket. This is, every side is buying in to this conflict.
Absolutely.
And yes, absolutely, Gary. It's a good point.
I mean the negative. So one of the things, and I've watched this over the years. You get somebody that is stirring the pot of negativity. It is very easy for people to jump in, and I'll just say, perhaps with all the global national things that have been going on for let's just say the last 8 to 10 years, that we hear in the media all the time, you carry it to work with you, right? Like I remember listening on the way to work and on the way home, the amount of negativity just on news stations. And I get to work and I'm like, I'm already exhausted. Why? And it's like, can you not say one positive thing? Or how about 10 positive things and one bad thing? Okay, right. Put that in the middle. And I think it's basically that, is being intentional of pivoting this culture of incivility. There's a really good book called The Cost of Bad Behavior. And I forgot I have it here somewhere in the library. And they actually go through and they actually do measurements of how much incivility costs an organization. And as you can well imagine, it's tens of millions of dollars, right? Which then negates them being high reliability organizations. But so Meri, share with us, if you don't mind, in general terms, maybe some of the most memorable events that really, what we want our listeners to learn is how to identify the issues, and then eventually we'll get into some strategies and how do you offset those, and once you've identified it. Because I think a lot of the times we're unaware, we don't identify, and then we get sucked into this, for lack of a better word, amygdala hijack, right? Our forebrain's not functioning and it's our brainstem. And then we get sucked down.
Brain.
Yeah.
The snake brain. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe share with the audience of some, in general terms.
I just want to say it took me a really long time to understand something so simple, and that is you can only control your own behavior.
Oh, great point. Absolutely.
You cannot control other people's behavior. And boy, there was the time, while I was struggling in these leadership roles where I would bend over backwards for these people to like me.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't. You can only do what you can do for yourself. So if people can just remember that you can only control your own behavior. The second point is you don't know what's going on in other people's lives.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And especially like Lynn mentioned, nobody's talking really. And really, we go into a field where you really don't talk. We hardly see each other during the day. So, give grace. Something might be going on that you're not aware of. If it goes further than that, to an example that Lynn had with the Halloween, it was Nurse Anesthesia Week, which is, by the way, coming up. So happy Nurse Anesthesia Week, everybody.
Yes.
We put up, I was very big on doing something huge for CRNA Week, both at Duke and the Cleveland Clinic. So what I would do is I would have the students bring down an anesthesia machine, park it by the cafeteria or something like that, with signs on what a nurse anesthetist is and what we do, and let them see the machine and so on and so forth. So I had these big posters with what a CRNA is and what we do, and the students were showing the machine to people. And I got in the next morning, it was about 7:30 in the morning, and you have to pass it to go to where I was going. Somebody took a marker and crossed out half the things that were on the poster as far as what a CRNA does.
Oh, God.
And
what?
Yes, they took a marker and they just marked it out with a Sharpie. And lo and behold, we had cameras pointing right at the situation.
Beautiful.
And Garry, it was a doc.
Yeah. Crazy.
It was a doc. So, and of course, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you read the word or not. Somehow that just flies through because everybody saw it. By the time I got the posters down, and we did our investigation and stuff like that, if you know, you know.
Right.
So that's just an example of, you've got these young residents coming in, and what are we doing to help the residents understand what a CRNA is? And then you've got these young CRNA students coming in as CRNAs. What are we doing to understand where the residents are coming from? They're not nurses.
Right.
They don't have the background we have.
Right.
So that's an example. And as far as, knowing, my philosophy has changed so much for doing this so long. When I go into a new place, I am neutral. And it's a little sad to say, I'm sort of a bubbly, outgoing personality, and I've become very, very introverted when I go into a new place. You've got to feel things out. You stay very neutral. You respect those OR nurses. You respect the person who's working her butt off to run the desk. You respect your doc. You call them by, if they want to be called doctor, if they introduce themselves by their first name, I'm a doctor. You're all doctors. Of course, not in the hospital. I get that, but it's just respect and neutrality at this point. And that's what I think.
And I also think you have to stand up for yourself
You do.
from the surgeons. Like I try to be funny the first time when I say something, but then there's a point where, and I love that I'm so tall because I pull my glasses down and I give them the Aunt B look. And I'm like, you know what? It's not okay that you talk to me like that. It's just not. And so if we could just focus on taking care of the patient and making sure that everybody's doing a good job, but we're not going to talk like that to each other. I do it with my anesthesiologist too, even though I've hardly ever had anybody be rude or anything to me. I just don't care that they think I, as a CRNA, don't know what they know. And I look at them and say, you know what? I read the same books you read. And I don't think I'm a doctor. I don't pretend that I'm a doctor. I just ask and, quite frankly, demand that you acknowledge the gifts I bring to the dance. I'm the one in the room doing the open heart anesthesia. Where are you? I don't know.
100%, Lynn.
But you have the time to go to the state legislator and talk about how dangerous we are. That's not okay. But there's a point that I'm not going to fight about that because they've been taught, gosh, what's his name? Bob Matthews, brilliant PhD. He said to me once years ago, the doctors always used to say how we weren't safe, but now they've been taught to believe it. This whole atmosphere of they're dangerous, they're not enough, they don't know what they're doing. And as Sharon Pierce once said to a legislator, where's all the dead bodies?
Right. Where's the count?
Yeah,
What's going on? So, and you're right. All I can do is control me and my reaction to things, even though I'm not very good at it. When I see stuff that I think is really, really wrong, I get very angry. We had a CRNA in the lounge at one of the hospitals, and she's just talking about this one SRNA. And she was absolutely poisoning the well for every other CRNA in that room who was going to have her as a student.
Yeah.
And I just had to say, you know what? Shut up. You cannot talk like that in the middle of our lounge about a student.
My daughter.
If you have a problem with her, you talk to the students, you talk to the school. You don't poison the well with the other CRNAs.
Because you could be having a bad day, or she could be having a bad day. Don't tell every other CRNA she's not a good student. That's horrible.
Well, and I think that's the number one learning thing for anybody that is teaching is that what's the word? You praise in public and you criticize in private.
That's right.
Right?
Behind doors.
And,
that's right.
And to your point, Lynn, is that you put that student at such a horrible disadvantage. And I used to witness this in my workplace. We had one CRNA, a very, very good clinician, was requested by the same surgeons all the time. Ripe opportunity for students to learn, like these are, high volume blood loss cases, highly technical, central lines, arterial lines, epidurals, you name it. Great experience for students. And this one particular morning, I remember I was in the OR control center and a student comes over to me and says, well, I got kicked out of the room. And I said, what do you mean you got kicked out of the room? And they're like, so they tell me the story that, they came in extra early, set everything up, but it wasn't to the liking of the CRNA. And the CRNA was in a rather ill mood that morning, as they typically were most mornings, and comes in and, we put green towels on top of the anesthesia cart, takes the green towel with all the stuff the student had set up, says, this is not the way we do it here, pulls the towel into the trash can and orders the student out of the room. Like, can you imagine?
That's so unacceptable.
How
I can't.
So that ended up setting up a lineage of behavioral issues for this individual. So I think that's one of the first things is we need to acknowledge what behaviors and conduct is unacceptable, number one, right? And address it immediately. If you're not addressing it immediately, it means that you're And I get it. People are fearful, and so fearful of retaliation or, those types of things.
Especially in the student role.
Well, I was just thinking the exact same thing, Lynn. But there is a hierarchy, and I'll say this, because I've also had this scenario. I was a clinical director even while I was chief, and I was building the group, and then I handed off that clinical director role to probably individuals that I probably should have done a better evaluation of. But they did a disservice for the student's body at large because they weren't listening to the concerns the students had. And so there wasn't this bi-directional communication, right? And so now what we have is we actually have a full committee that actually puts the students in the CRNA's rooms of people that are proper preceptors and that actually want to engage and actually teach the students. Those preceptors are also evaluated by the students. And that information is given back to the preceptors so that they can learn and grow too. I mean, we're not perfect, but you still have to have that feedback, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things with, let's just say, perioperative healthcare providers. It's everybody, getting constructive criticism is really, really hard to take. But there are two key things to success of being able to change yourself. Number one is self-reflecting, right? Did I show up correctly today at work? And if the answer is yes, maybe 80 or 85% of the time, then you need to reflect and say, okay, what did I do that 15 or 20% of the time that I could have been a better person? That's number one. Number two is soliciting that like if you're getting evaluated by your peers, and I put students in there as peers, you should be embracing that feedback. Now, there's a caveat to that. There are people out there that don't know how to give constructive criticism, right? There are people that are ugly, caustic, and I'm sure you've all seen it A to Z, like the most, and so now you're left with, okay, how do I pare this down now so that it's actually constructive, positive criticism for the person to take away and say, okay, I'm going to learn from this and I want to do better, right? Versus beat them down. And that's kind of been the story of, I hate to say, nursing, right? Is eating.
Nurses eat their young.
Right.
That's the infamous saying about our beginnings.
It's very sad. It really is. It's so true. And, I look up the ladder for this, Gary. I look at first the two sets of groups, the docs and the CRNAs, and then I look up the ladder at the leadership.
Yep.
This is why I ended up on night shift alone in my call room. It's just after banging your head against the wall for years and years and years, trying to make a difference and just feeling constantly defeated, not just by docs, by your own CRNAs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gets old, and what's going to happen is we're not going to have good leaders in the future. I'm scared for the future. I really am, because it is super hard, Lynn, and I know you'll agree with me, to lead a group of CRNAs.
Oh, yeah.
Notice that?
I've never been in that role, and I wouldn't want to be in that role ever.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. We're going to have a hard time finding good leaders.
Well, and I think, Meri, that's the reason why it's really important, I think, in the training now is to give them that leadership infrastructure. I tell you, I'm confident the entire class can tell you a range of leadership characteristics and traits by title and dimensions and how we go across those, because I had them give lectures
My daughter is shaking
over
her head.
and over. Right. There are like 50 of them, right? And we did it twice. So that's embedded, right? That's now muscle or cerebral memory that doesn't go away. But as you're now having those interactions, you're able to look at yourself and say, this is how I show up, but this is how I have to pivot with every diverse individual that I have to confront. And one of the things I told the class was people, certainly in healthcare is the worst for it. People are not put into leadership positions because they're good leaders. They are put into leadership positions because they're clinical experts. So we've removed a clinical expert from a high functioning role, right? And we put them into this environment that they have no idea.
Yes.
Right?
100% yes. 100% yes.
And so then you're like, all right, it's like, I don't know how to swim. Throw me in the ocean and let's see if I can swim. Right? And
it's so true.
And so the leadership pipeline has to be intentional. And there are people that have sort of those innate skill sets. But if you don't have leaders that know how to identify those, then it ends up spiraling out of control, and it's a problem. So let me ask the two of you then, in our settings, undermining clinical judgment. Thoughts? Level of incivility?
It's funny, this example keeps coming up in my mind, and it's really actually very civil, and it's the way the world should work. So we're talking, a little bit negative here, and just to shine a little bit of a positive ray, just the other day, I was in a room, and at night, I'm doing a lot of OB, a lot of epidurals. And a doc went up to do an epidural, and he could not get it, and he had me relieved from my room for me to come do the epidural, and I got it on the first try. Okay, so unbelievably civil. Just last night, we had a food bolus. A man decided to eat a hot dog without his teeth.
Oh.
And I went to do a direct laryngoscopy, and the hot dog was sitting underneath the epiglottis right there. And I couldn't, and it was flesh colored. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And you know what? I handed that scope over to the doc, and I'm like, I'm really having a difficult time seeing what's going on here. Can you take a look?
Yeah.
And he took a look, and he actually scooped it out with his finger, believe it or not. But it was just this mutual respect of, can we help each other? This is great.
Yeah.
And, so that's just something positive, and that's, we all wish for world peace, blah, blah, blah. So wait, Gary, what was the question?
Well, no. So I want to sort of spring off of that a little bit too. And that's been my experience. And perhaps maybe that comes a little bit with experience or tenure. The physicians and the CRNAs that I work with really well. So physicians, let's start with that. We collaborate on everything. And, it's not a matter of so there are a few physicians that when we're doing cases, they're together, we kind of start going over, hey, did you see these issues? Any concern? And it's this back and forth. You have any concerns? Well, what suggestions do you have? Are you comfortable with, these certain, and it's this dialogue that's very positive, not hierarchical, and we're colleagues, right? And
it's a sharing of ideas.
It is.
Not punitive.
Right.
Right. And how nice was your day that day, Gary? It's just a nice way to start your day.
Well, not only is it the nice way to start your day, but people that interact that way, when things go down, there is this level of mutual respect and trust to where they know you got your back, or like you've done, hey, I'm going to call in my colleague because I'm not having a good day today and I need help. I need that set of hands. Versus the two individuals that butt heads, right? And they're incivil with one another. They're snipping at each other. And I'll tell you, the rest of the room sees it too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they'll comment on it, which is crazy.
So I can probably name at least 15 CRNAs off the top of my head that would not have handed that laryngoscope to that doc just because.
It's crazy.
And we're doing a rapid sequence. I got a full stomach. I got a thing stuck in the thing. And I know, and I guess, honestly, it comes with tenure. I really do believe that, Gary, and I think you mentioned that. It comes with tenure experience. So it's the young ones that are building, and they kind of have to go through their, I went through enough to know.
Right. Yeah. I remember.
But I can think of an instance where the anesthesiologist is extremely controlling and doesn't give respect. And so the CRNA, it was a very difficult airway. And he was like, give it to me, give it to me. And she's like, no, I can see, thank you. And she got the tube right in. But it has to come from the other side too.
Right. It's mutual.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
just this mutual, yeah. I pray everybody gets to experience that at least at one place that they work, and they'll see either what they're missing or the place that they really should be working and want to work at.
Are you a resident or CRNA looking to transition into independent practice? The AANA and Beyond the Mask are here to help you thrive as your own boss. Introducing the 1099 CRNA Institute, taught by Beyond the Mask host Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. This comprehensive educational series provides detailed guidance on business structure, legal and tax implications, and financial management tailored specifically for 1099 CRNAs. Lean into the feeling of freedom and embrace the opportunity to be your own boss with the AANA as your partner on this exciting journey toward independence. Enroll now and earn valuable continuing education credits as you chart a new course in your rewarding career. Visit aana.com/1099 to learn more and take the first step toward your new future. The 1099 CRNA Institute. Thrive as your own boss.
Well, and that starts to set up, the definition of a positive culture, right? Organizations that have a good working culture, people gravitate to it. And typically, you end up having waiting lists to actually go in and work with those people because there's a lot more enjoyment out of the job. Well, it's not even viewed as a job. It's like, I enjoy going to work, period.
And they talk to their friends. They talk to the other CRNAs. And so when somebody's looking for a job, they're like, wow, I like what I was hearing about your place. Who do I call to get an interview, kind of a thing.
Right.
But when it's bad, it tends to stay bad.
Well, and that kind of goes into, so what are some of the root causes of, our environments, not just anesthesia, but perioperative and healthcare systems at large. And so we talk about things like moral distress and burnout, and that will actually shift right into staffing shortages because once you get that toxic culture, people do not want to come and work in those environments because it's stressful. And
we're facing not just CRNAs, not just anesthesiologists. We are facing the sickest, most obese patients in the world. You don't have enough staff. Nobody can help you move this intubated ICU patient into the OR. I had a patient a couple of years ago. I just couldn't even, and I swear to God, it's true. His BMI, 103.
Oh,
he looked like a Toyota Corolla laying in the ICU bed.
Wow.
And it was a Sunday. There wasn't staff. And even on CPR mode, he was too big and the mattress would fold inward.
Unbelievable.
And then you have not enough. You have all the traveler circulators. They don't know where stuff is. You've got so many other dimensions going on. And then you have this fight between the docs and us and the AAs. It becomes untenable. At times, you try to manage it, you try to work with it, you stand up for yourself, you stand up for your patient, but it wears on you.
Yeah.
So
it wears on me.
Yes, you said a really important word. Thus, the locum was born.
Yes. Yeah.
Gary, 100%.
Without
because
question.
now I only have to deal with this place for 3 months, make my gazillion dollars, and go on to the next.
Right.
Thus the locum. Thus, I've never seen so many locums at so many places as I.
Yeah.
Because they're losing staff like crazy. And then COVID hit.
Yes.
And we had to wear the same mask for a week.
Yep.
And then you had patients come in who refused to get vaccinations, but by God, you better fix whatever's wrong with me. And they're breathing in my face.
Well,
I'm sorry, might be in.
How about add a little bit of production pressure in there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And then do it all for pennies on the dollar.
Right. So let me ask the two of you, talk to us a little bit about the lounge.
Toxic.
I mean, is that where it starts?
Everybody should work night shift. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, I don't think the lounge is where it starts. I just think that people are burnt out and CRNAs have a tendency to forget that they at one time didn't know this stuff.
Right, right.
And it's like, don't you remember when you were new and your first intubation or your first A line or you don't remember those moments? Everybody has to start somewhere. So instead of being punitive or, oh my God, you didn't get that, you could say, hey, try this the next time and see if you can't work this a little bit better. But you don't throw them out of the room. You teach them, you talk to them, you help, you get your own wrist out there and point where the artery goes. You do what you can about teaching people because everybody's new in the beginning.
Right.
So be nice.
Absolutely. And back to the lounge thing. When I was chief at Duke, I'd do my rounds and I'd walk into the lounge. And as soon as I walk into the lounge, it's silence.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, everybody, what's everybody talking about? Everybody just puts their head down and eats lunch. It is what you make it.
Yeah.
Gary, it is what you make it. So if that team wants to go there, just, I'm not quite sure how you stop it.
It's an individual that you do the best that you can. Like you said, you can't control other people's behavior.
Right.
We'll get into some of the techniques and how to maybe offset that in the next episode. So that's going to force our listeners to listen to a second episode of civility and incivility. Well, let's kind of leave off on sort of this normalization of disrespect, and I think it's throughout the entire perioperative setting, because we even see our nursing colleagues that perhaps some are envious of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
you just sit there at the head of the bed. You're not doing anything.
Right. What are you doing? Right. I will tell you on that point, when I give my anesthesia, I really draw an invisible box around my area, and I really don't want them in my box. And look at me 30 years into it, I still don't want them in my box. Sometimes they'll just be helpful, and shame on me, but I don't want them inside my box that I drew. And I don't know, Gary, shame on me for drawing a box.
So here's the way I kind of look at it is when I walk in the room and I go in early, and the reason why I go in early is to make sure I troubleshoot everything. And when it breaks, I want it to break while I'm there before I go even see the patient. I live in fantasy land, and so I get to spend an inordinate amount of time with the family and the patient. But when I set up,
first one.
Well, usually we only do one or two a day anyways in the big cases. But I try to help make the bed. I try to fix the arm board, which I'm going to fix the arm boards anyways, but the nurses tend to, if you're kind of run behind, they'll do it. Usually they're coming in the room as I'm getting ready to go out and spend my time with the patient, but I will stop and I will ask them if there's anything I can do to help. Can I put the straps on that? Like just their little things. But
yes.
They sit there, it's like, well, why? He does anesthesia. Why is he asking that? But they've recognized that, I'm working with Gary today because the room is set up, the bed's made. And anyway, when we come back to the room on the easy things, I try to include them sometimes. Like if the doc I'm working with is kind of strapped, they got two really big rooms and they're running back and forth, I'm like, just take your time. I'm going to train the nurse how to squeeze the bag for me or hold the mask for me. Because there are times when, let's just say I extubate and my teammate says, just keep going, I'm stuck in whatever room. I want the nurse to be able to be, not necessarily the expert set of hands, but at least they know not to ventilate 40 breath. Like, it's like, no, we're not doing high frequency oscillation. We just need normal breathing, okay? I get it. You're breathing.
When you breathe, you squeeze.
That's right? And then teaching them how to do that. Because, like, if you have a laryngospasm, I would rather have them be able to squeeze on the mask while I'm drawing up the sucks to put that into the line so I can break it.
Squeeze the bag. Or
squeeze it. Exactly. So, for the
And they
most
want to
part,
help you.
Yeah.
Because you've had this open demeanor with them, introduced yourself.
Yes.
I can tell you a story that I do a lot of skull base. And so I like to start 180 degrees from the machine. And I remember this one day, the patient I went, so I got all set up. I went out, looked at the patient, and I'm like, this one could be an issue. But, again, this comes from doing it for so long. I'm like, well, I got a video laryngoscope, should be fine. If not, I have a bougie ready. If not, we already have the fiber optic on the device, so we should be good. But I went back and I told the nurse, I said, look, if we're having trouble, I need you to squeeze the bag. And so I had them already prepped. They're all ready to go. So we go in the room, I DL with the video Mac and patient's anterior. And I couldn't get the tube, just would not hook onto the arytenoids. I mean, I got the right. It's just one of those scenarios. And so the doc I'm working with, you can see them starting to get a little tense because they don't see much either. And I said, give me the bougie. So I give the bougie. The bougie, even as I'm twirling it, it just wouldn't hook in the posterior arytenoid. And so I said, let's just back out. Let's just ventilate. I tell the doc, I said, go ahead. I got the fiber optics there. I tell the nurse to go around the circulator. I said, go ahead, turn the pop-off valve to about 30, just squeeze the bag. And you can see their eyes are the size of truck tires, and I said, just we can ventilate. We're good. We can do this all day long, right? There's no rush. Trying to get the doc I'm working with, bless her heart, she was starting to sweat. And I said, all right, go ahead. Let's try the fiber optic. She couldn't get the fiber optic flipped over the arytenoid. And I'm like, okay, well, let's pull out, let's ventilate again. And so this is a couple of things. Number one, teaching everybody in the room what to do, what the roles were, but us being the leaders, being very calm. If you can ventilate, everything's fine. We can ventilate all day, right? So anyway, this is now the third attempt. And I said, all right, put the biggest hook on that endotracheal tube, and I want you to push as hard on that trachea as you can, right? And thankfully, the flange on the end of the tube finally flipped over the arytenoid, and we're able to hook it in. And but the nurse comes around and says, how are you so calm through all this? I said, because if I'm not calm, not a single person in this room is going to be calm. They're not going to be able to do their job, and they're not going to be able to listen to instruction or follow any type of order that we're giving, right? And so it was fine, but it was one of those moments I sat there and I reflected over the entire case. It's like, what could have I done differently, and was this the smartest thing to do? But it was fine. But it's just one of those things. But you got that mutual respect of the nurses after everybody leaves. They're like, like 98% of your group would never be able to function in this sort of but you taught us everything. And the scrubs were like, this was the best experience I've ever had, with a difficult airway. And it's like, it's all in everybody keeping calm and not yelling and screaming and carrying on, because nobody wins at that point. But it allowed us to develop a team. And those nurses, when they see incivility in the room, they're the first to come and tell me, hey, do you remember the airway we did? You should have seen today. And they all do it, right? Which is, so you start to develop those relationships, and it's like, well, maybe they had a bad day, or maybe the patient said, I try not to throw my colleagues under the bus, and that's another, Anyway, Lynn,
can I tell you about a similar situation?
Yeah, yes.
I was in MRI with a 6-year-old patient. And I just, those are scary. You're so far away from anybody to help you, kind of a thing. Anyway, this child starts to desat. I get her moved over. I'm saying everything out loud. Everybody's helping me. I get the mask on her and everything. But what was fascinating was they're like, you're so calm. Yeah. And I said, well, once it was all done, I said, it's kind of like watching a duck on the lake. and it's gliding along from the top, but underneath it's kicking like mad. I think my colon hit my thyroid and I want to die. But the thing is to stay calm and to say exactly what you need and do it and teach and whatever you can to stay calm. But oh my goodness.
Do you guys notice that trickles over into your personal life as well?
Oh, yeah.
Like when the shit is hitting the fan, I'm the calmest, always.
Yep.
I'm always the calmest. And I really do believe that is from my anesthesia training.
Without question.
Well, and I'm like that with adults, but if my children are hurt, I look like I'm doing a New Zealand pygmy rain dance.
Gotta agree with you guys.
With my thumb in my mouth. I'm not always very calm.
Don't talk about my kids. Right.
So I think, to close this episode, I think there's really 3 big pieces here, which is really a call to action for our listeners. And the first, I think, is why addressing incivility is so important, particularly in the anesthesia world, is because it directly impacts patient safety. That's number 1, right? If you don't show up good and you're not of sound mind, your patients are not going to get the quality services that you provide day in and day out. I think the other thing that we've talked about is sitting there and reflecting on our personal sort of limits, if you will, as well as our values. The only individual that you can change is you, right? And so self-reflection.
Great point, Meri.
Right?
Yep, so true.
And then I think we'll get into this in the next episode, and that is really about leadership, accountability, and influence. And, whether you're a formal or an informal leader, we're all leaders in the perioperative space. And so we'll kind of leave that teaser for the next episode. So with that, I want to thank our listeners for joining us today, and what I think is a really important topic to really get out on the table and for us to be able to have a conversation about and really explore each other's experiences. And I want to thank Meri, who's really had a lot of experience with this in some really high-powered organizations in the country, because if there's any place that you're going to have high stress and certainly incivility will creep in, it's in those centers that she's worked in. So I want to thank you, Meri.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Lynn, any parting words?
Yes, sir. I would say with communication and what we're doing, that it's clear communication, it's respectful communication, but I think we can stand up for ourselves. And I think other people pick up on that clarity and help them be the best that they can be. But we shouldn't have to take abuse, but I think we can stand up to it in a responsible and professional way.
Absolutely.
Great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, listeners. We encourage you to visit Beyond the Mask on the website and click on Clinical section, and you will find Anesthesia Alchemy, Lynn and Garry Unplugged, where you'll find our segments. Please go over to there and have a listen on this or many other episodes that we've done. Give us a like, preferably not a thumbs down. Give us a comment, or if there's anything that you'd like to see in the future, certainly make comments there, and we will try to bring that content to you in the clinical edition of Beyond the Mask. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode.